Hi everyone, welcome. We see that many of you are just joining us, so we're just going to wait just a few moments so you all can get in the room, get audio working and everything. So we're going to wait just a few moments. Thank you for spending your Thursday evening with us. We know there's a lot going on in your life as high school seniors for most of you, or parents of high school seniors. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy Thursday to come hear from us. So we're very excited, and we're going to get started in just a few moments. We're waiting on everyone to be able to enter the room. We're just going to wait a few more seconds. Again, thank you so much for joining. We're going to get started in just a second. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get going. I think many of you have joined the room. My name is Charlie Lazier. I'm the Director of First Year Admission here at Occidental, and I am joined by my colleague Tiffany in Financial Aid. I'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Tiffany Mendez. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at Oxy.
Great. And so the two of us will be walking you through an overview of the admission process and the financial aid process over the next hour. Want to clarify some expectations as we get going. We have a lot of information to throw at you, so we're going to talk quickly. There's a lot of information on these slides, but I want to assure you that this will be available on the website if you'd like to have a look later, and we're also going to email it out to you as well. So we're going to go fast. I always joke I'm from the East Coast and I talk fast, so bear with me here. Also, this is an information session specifically about admission and financial aid. If you are interested to learn more about the academic programs and the residential experiences, we do have general information sessions Tuesday and Thursday every week, so we encourage you to check those out. And also, our conversation today is primarily directed at the first year application experience. We do have another one of these sessions for transfer students, but a lot of the information will be similar, but today's session is really for first year students. You notice at the bottom of your screen, you do have a Q&A function. If you do have questions, we encourage you to ask them. There are many of you here today, so I can't guarantee that we will be able to get to all the questions today, but we will do our very best to make sure those questions are answered. We do have two admission officers behind the scenes. We're going to be sharing a few links with you in the chat and also helping us answer some of those Q&A as we go. You'll see the agenda here. These are the topics we plan to cover over the next hour. So if you have burning questions about merit scholarships, I promise you, we're going to get to them. We want to talk about essays, we're going to get to them. So I'm going to talk for the first part of the session, and then I'll turn it over to Tiffany about halfway through. So let's get going. So this has been quite a year in the world of college admissions and for you as students. And so we wanted to get this out of the way at the beginning to talk to you about the questions we're receiving most often, the questions that are coming up most frequently, and the things that people are most concerned about. The first is, we are a test optional school, as nearly every school has done in the past several months, and we went test optional this spring. I think a lot of people are a little confused at test optional. People are asking, does it really mean this test optional? Should I submit it? No, we understand there are enormous issues with access to testing in the world right now. And so we want to reassure you that in our process, we are creating a fully nuanced process that will understand whether or not you submit test scores. And we'll talk a little bit about testing a little bit later on. There's also been a little bit of a concern that the students who took a gap year this year, so people who graduated in 2020 that have deferred for a year, are going to be taking spots from this applicant pool, and that is not the case. Our first year class this year is definitely smaller than we had projected and wanted it to be, and so next year's class will be larger. There will be no felt difference in selectivity in the way that we approach our process. And that's pretty much true at most schools around the country, is that this is a smaller incoming class, and next year they project to be a slightly bigger class. And so we're making accommodations for those students taking the gap year, and there will be no difference in selectivity that we're seeing. In terms of COVID-19 on the impact on your extracurriculars and letters of recommendation, we understand there's been major disruption. If you were on a sports team, if you were playing in a band, if you were doing things that involved you interacting with a lot of people, those have all been put on pause for the most part in many parts of the country and in the world. So we're always leading with the benefit of the doubt. We understand what's going on. We understand that things have been disrupted, and we're giving you the benefit of the doubt of what you would have been doing, how you would have been involved. And this is one of many times that I will plug that interviewing is really critical for us this year. We want to hear from you what your passions are. We want to hear what has happened over the past year in terms of your activities, and interviewing is a wonderful way to express that. And I'll be saying that a few times, but that's a critical piece of the process this year. Some of you have asked us a little bit about the COVID-19 essay prompt and the Common Application. This is an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about the disruptions that have happened over the past few months, whether it's based on things that have changed at school, things that have changed at home. We want to know from you how those disruptions have affected your learning, affected your whole life experience. If family members have become ill, we want to hear about that. There's no right way to approach this in the Common Application, but we definitely encourage you to write a paragraph, write some bullet points, share a sentence or two. But if you choose not to write anything, that's also okay as well. But if you do have something to share about the disruptions, we'll be certainly glad to hear that. And then other students have been asking about demonstrated interest. During a year with so many uncertainties, will we be paying more to demonstrated interest? And this is a little bit of a yes and no answer. Historically, Oxy has only been paying attention to demonstrated interest if you lived in Southern California. If you lived 3,000 miles away, if you lived on the other side of the world, demonstrated interest wasn't really factoring into our admission decisions. This year, we are hoping to see you attending one of our sessions, engaging with us in one way. And again, if students have the interest in interviewing, it is strongly recommended. Every year in our process, students who choose to interview are significantly more likely to be admitted than students who do not interview. So we definitely encourage that. And then just remember that everyone is going through the global pandemic at this point. I think there can be a lot of fears, a lot of anxiety about how this will be a fair process, and just remember that everyone is going through this together, and you're not at any particular disadvantage just because your school did things differently or because circumstances were different in your state. We are really approaching this with an open heart and open mind this year. So thinking through the things that we value in our process and how we are evaluating students and what are the things that are most important to us. We're really looking at a whole array of data points to be able to decide who to invite into our community. We're really looking at your academic preparation. We're going to see if you're going to contribute to our residential community and in what ways. We want to think about you as an individual who's going to be someone's roommate, and we want to see how you are as a human, as an individual, and invite you into this residential community that prides itself on its identity and its value set. And we also have, Division III sports, and we want to bring in athletes, and we want to bring in musicians. And so we do have some aspects of our process that look at those features as well. But to go a little bit deeply into the academic preparation, we'll first start talking about your high school record and the things that we value in the process. So for us, when we are evaluating your high school transcript, we always say in every presentation that this is the most important thing to us. And this has been the case for probably since the beginning of our admission process, is caring about which courses you're taking and how well you're doing in those courses. We always look at what's available at your high school and what choices you've made in the courses there. We're also reasonable people, and we don't expect you to take every AP class, enroll in every higher level IB course. We don't expect you to take every honors course from 9th grade forward. We want you to see you playing to your strengths, but we also want to see you challenging yourself. Oxy is a rigorous place and a writing intensive place, and we want to be able to see that you've prepared yourself for the experiences here. We are, when you're choosing your courses, we are taking a look at your grades, of course, and seeing and what kind of grades you're getting in those challenging courses. Generally, students have a B plus or A minus average in the challenging courses. So in those AP courses, in the IB courses, in the higher level honors courses, students are generally achieving a B plus or A minus in those courses. You can see below our middle 50% of our GPA. So most students have an A minus average that are admitted to Occidental. Every high school does GPA quite differently. So we have to focus on what we have as an unweighted GPA. We look at your core academic subjects and then the grades that are provided by your school. So the median GPA is around a 3.7. In the middle 50%, so about a quarter of the students who are admitted have a GPA below a 3.6 unweighted, and then a quarter of the students who are admitted have above a 3.94, which is essentially all A's all the time. But again, taking pretty challenging courses. Fewer high schools are reporting class rank these days, but generally students are in the top 20% of their class. So to talk a little bit about test scores, prior to this year, Occidental has required test scores for all applicants, except for a subset of some international students who were not able to access testing. And now this is a global issue that most people are not able to access testing, so it is not required. In fact, we expect few students will actually submit test scores this year. Schools that have been test optional for years usually have a subset of their population that does not submit test scores in a test optional environment. We suspect that most students will not submit test scores. So you're at no disadvantage if you choose not to submit test scores. Even if you've had the opportunity to take at the SAT or ACT, there's no pressure to submit those scores to us. For those students who have had the opportunity to take it and feel that those test scores do represent their academic potential well, we will super score those. We will look at your highest math and highest verbal scores on the SAT, and then also recalculate a super score composite. You can see here the median scores of students that are admitted to Oxy. And I always say, remember what a median is. This is not a cutoff. If you don't have a 1420, that doesn't mean that you're automatically not admitted. That's just the median of admitted students there. So most students that are admitted have between a 1350 and a 1490, or between a 30 and a 34, but a quarter of students have below that and a quarter of students do have above that. SAT2 and AP scores are never required, but certainly can help show particular talents in areas, so feel free to submit those scores to us. In terms of extracurriculars, we care about what you're doing outside of the classroom. And as I mentioned at the start of this, we understand it's been a wild year and there's been so many disruptions that have happened in this year. We care about commitment. We care about things that you're very passionate about and pursued for many years. So we really like to see the depth of that involvement, but also widely you being involved in many things. I think a lot of people worry that they have to be super, super well-rounded and the president of every club. I always say we have many well-rounded students at Oxy, but we also have some pointy ones as well, people who do one thing really, really well, in addition to the students who are doing many things really well. We're just mostly looking for students who have a real passion and are bringing that passion to us. And a great way for you to articulate that passion is through an interview, so we can have a conversation with you about what you're really passionate about. In this year of years, we also care quite a bit with your responsibilities at home, whether it's part-time jobs, taking care of siblings, helping out with grandparents, whatever it is. We want to know how you're spending your time outside of the academic environment. And we know it looks really different this year. And so we want you to share as much as possible with us about how you're staying busy outside the classroom, so that we know when you come to a place like Oxy in our residential community that you're going to also be involved. For the recommendation letters, we do ask for 1 letter from a high school counselor and 2 from academic subject areas from teachers. And you're able to submit more letters of recommendation if you feel that that is helpful. For us, we always say 3 letters is enough already for you to have to ask people in your life for. So don't feel like you need to submit 4, 5, 6 letters. We really are just asking for those 3. If there is a different area that you feel represents part of your life that's not reflected in an academic subject, it might be helpful to hear from an athletic coach, a person who is your band instructor, a religious leader, we don't necessarily need letters from your best friends, but those are sometimes fun to read. But we really are truly looking just at your high school counselor letter and your two academic subject areas. Those are the things we care most about. These don't have to be in areas where you have the highest grade. We want teachers that know you particularly well and can speak to you not just as a learner in their classroom, but as a human and what you can contribute to this community. So talking about a little bit about the essays, I feel like we could spend another full hour together talking about essays and tips and things that we love to see and favorite stories and things like that. I'll leave you with my most general advice that I think hopefully will translate to however you're approaching your topic. Focus on the photo, not the photo album, is what I once heard. Focus on something that's particular. Bring the reader into a moment. Bring the reader into a very particular anecdote rather than trying to share everything that's ever happened in your entire life through this essay. So really focusing on a particular segment of time, a particular group of seconds, a couple of minutes that really can engage the reader. And I always give this example. Let's take a student who has been doing ballet her whole life and writes her essay. Starting at age 5, she got involved and had a really awful middle school experience, but persevered. And now she's the principal dancer in the Pleasantville Ballet Company. Another approach to that essay may be starting off with 15 seconds, 20 seconds before the curtain goes up for the very first time, bringing the reader into the way that her heart is fluttering, her excitement right before she jumps out on stage for the very first time, but in that role of principal dancer. And I think when you think about moments and allowing you to tell your story that way, it's a lot more compelling to read. It's a lot easier for us to get to know you as an individual when we are able to see you through individual moments, as opposed to reading a full chronology of everything that's ever happened in your life. And so really focusing on those moments will make a big difference. Also think about sharing something we're not seeing somewhere else in the application. If your main activity outside of the classroom is being on the soccer team and volunteering with little kids, teaching them how to play soccer, I might recommend that you not write your essay about your favorite soccer game. We want to learn something new. We want to see something a little bit different that's not represented elsewhere in the application. And we want to see who you are. We want to learn about you, the way you think and the way you feel, and as many different avenues as possible through this essay of choosing a different topic than is reflected elsewhere is helpful. And also remember your audience. You are not writing to someone who is 80 years old with no sense of humor. If you look at most admission officers around the country, you'll notice that most schools have 2 readers who will read your application. Typically the first reader, not at every school, but quite often the first reader is an alum from that institution who's a few years removed from the institution, usually a recent graduate that may have just returned from grad school or something like that. And so they're often near your age. So you're not writing this essay to someone who is older than your grandparents. So remember that it's okay to be funny. It's okay to use slang. It's okay to take risks. You're not writing to someone that's totally out of touch and is looking to find something wrong in your essay. We want to be engaged and we want to learn about you as much as possible. Oxy has 6 supplemental questions for us to learn a little bit more about you. And these are, of course, specific to Oxy. The first question we call why Oxy, and nearly every institution is going to ask you why you're applying to their institution. And here we're just looking to know a little bit about what has motivated you to be part of the Oxy community. And whether that's an academic subject area, whether that's something you're passionate about, whether that's something that you're really drawn to by an alum you've met, whatever that reason is, we want to hear about it. Many of you probably haven't had the opportunity to visit campus, so you can reflect on a session you went to and engaged with some of our student ambassadors and tell us a little bit about that. My advice for this question, not just for Oxy, but for any school, is to be as authentic as possible about what really is driving you, and not just Googling different professors and doing a data dump of showing how much you read our view book. The second question really focuses on Oxy's central mission and asks you to reflect on the 4 cornerstones that kind of make up what Oxy values and what is driving the mission of the college. And so we ask you to reflect on kind of the intersection of community and diversity and your own perspectives and how that might affect your perception of community and diversity, and just to kind of sit with that and reflect on it and share your thoughts on that second question. The third question, I think a lot of students struggle with quite a bit. We're asking them to share something a little personal. We're asking you to share something that is quirky, weird, goofy, off the wall, and we're asking for you to tell us something that kind of your friends poke fun at you at, or your parents give you a hard time about. But we want you to show that quirky side, and I think this is where students really can make us laugh, and we get to enjoy hearing fun and different things. I remember one year reading about a student who in her pastime, she really loved to watch surgeries on YouTube. That was what her friends always found her in between classes when she needed a break. That was her thing. She would always be found watching surgeries on YouTube. And so whether it's funny or interesting, we're asking, what's your quirk? What's something that's a little bit different about you? The fourth question is our longest question, and we want you to reflect on two components that are big and central to the Oxy experience. One is research, and the second is talking about a current event or social movement. You just choose one and you reflect on one or the other. In the first part, the research question, we're asking what you would love to research at Oxy, and why. We're not asking you to know the answer to that research question. We're not asking you to develop a fully thought out senior project just yet. We just want to hear what intrigues you. What are your intellectual curiosities, and why is that something you want to know a little bit more about? The second one, describing a current event or social movement that's affecting a place that's important to you. We left that open-ended. It doesn't have to be your home, but what is a place that's important to you, and a social movement that's affecting that place, and to describe the significance and kind of reflect on how a community is affected by an event or social movement. And the final two questions are quick. They're meant to be fun. They are not. Don't look into them too much. We are asking you, if you were to play a song for your roommate on move-in day, what would that be? You don't have to tell us why, just tell us the song. If you want to tell us the artist, great. But what is that song? And the last question is super fun. If you had your own food truck or restaurant, what would you call it? So we invite people to use puns and make us smile and make us laugh. This is kind of a reflection of food trucks and fun, quirky restaurants are really surrounding us in our local neighborhood. And so we allow students to have a little fun with that last question there. So all this coming together, we really spend a lot of time getting to know you as an individual in this process. I always talk about, there's a couple years ago, I can't remember who did the study. I remember reading that most schools spend an average of about 10 minutes on an application total. When you think about major giant universities that have tens upon tens of thousands of applications to get through, they don't have the luxuries that we do as a small residential college to really invest a lot of time in your application. And so we read each application twice. Each of those reads takes about 20 to 25 minutes. That's about 45 minutes that's spent getting to know you as an individual before you even arrive at our committee process. And so just like everything else at Occidental, our processes of admission is going to be very personal, because the educational experience is going to be very personal here. We do an extensive training with our staff. Our staff represents so many different perspectives and comes from a diverse array of life experiences, so that we can have really dynamic discussions within our admissions team. Quickly, I'll go into deadlines. We have 2 rounds of early decision and then a regular decision deadline. I'll talk about early decision a bit more in just a second. You will notice that ED1 will have a deadline of November 15th. ED2 will have a deadline of February 1st. And you usually are notified about 3 to 4 weeks after that deadline. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. Our regular decision deadline, where most students apply, has a January 10th deadline. That's about a 3-month process, and we will notify you a little bit before April 1. I I put our transfer deadlines there as well for spring and fall. But again, most of our talk today is about first-year students. So ED, early decision is different than early action. Early decision, you apply to one early decision school, and if admitted, you do enroll there. So it is a binding decision. About a third of our students here at Oxy come in through ED1 and ED2, and the other 2/3 come in through regular decision. There's no real difference between admit rates or what we're looking for in ED1 and ED2. It really is the deadline that's different between the two. Some students are ready to make that commitment in November, and other students need a bit more time. This year, our early decision 2 deadline is February 1, and that is a month later than it has historically been. We know that this year is very different, and we want to give people a little bit more time to make that, binding decision. So we did move the ED2 deadline back a month to give people a little bit more flexibility in their senior year to do that. You'll notice that the regular decision deadline is actually before the second ED2 deadline, and that's because we need that full 3 months really to review those applications and process everything. So our regular decision deadline has maintained at January 10th, and so that is unchanged. But the deadline change this year was moving the ED2 deadline from January 1st to February 1st. And our financial aid deadlines match these exactly. And so Tiffany will talk a little bit about that. Our early decision admit rates are higher than our regular decision admit rates, and that's true of most colleges out there. We typically have around a 50% admit rate for early decision and around a 30 to 35% admit rate for regular decision. So last but not least, and a great segue into talking about financial aid, merit scholarships. And so Oxy does award a small amount of merit scholarships every year. About 15 to 20% of our applicant pool will be awarded a merit scholarship. These range between $5,000 and $25,000 a year, with the exception of our Obama Scholars Program, which I can talk about briefly. This is based primarily on academic ability, extracurricular involvement, and kind of impact in your community. Those are the things we're looking for. There's no separate application. Everyone is considered just on the common application. We ask you, would you like to be considered for merit? Yes or no? And so almost everyone selects yes. And so we are considering them in our merit process. Oxy is a school though that has prioritized most of its institutional funds for need-based assistance. And so Tiffany will talk a lot about that. But we, compared to many of our peers, our merit scholarships are perhaps sometimes smaller, and because we are prioritizing so much of our institutional funds towards that need-based aid to make sure everyone we're admitting is able to afford Oxy. The Obama Scholars Program, super quickly, is a program that was started a few years ago that is for students who are really committed to a lifetime of public service. That's a full ride experience at Occidental. We, of our applicant pool of about 7,000, will invite 20 to write an additional essay, and then bring about 8 to 10 of those in for an interview and select typically 2 to 4 students to be an Obama Scholar. So it's a big honor, but it is a very small number of students that are giving the full tuition room and board in that program. And that was named after our most famous student. And I'll wrap up now to hand it over to Tiffany, but just a few things to remember. Definitely follow directions. Please respond to your email. That's the way we're going to communicate with you throughout this process. If possible, apply on time. Just like you're hearing, vote early. We want you to apply early as well. Every year we see about half the applicant pool will apply within 48 hours of the deadline. And so that causes a bit of frantic nature if something doesn't come through. And so even if it's just 72 hours before the deadline, students are much happier in the process. So please don't wait until the last second. Make sure you proofread. I also think this is a great time in your senior year to have a conversation with parents about how much ownership you want in this process and how much involvement they'll have in editing essays and being involved in where you're selecting, and just set boundaries now about when you should who's opening the admit letters when they come in the mail in March, and just have those conversations now. And then I'll end with this before passing off to Tiffany. We are making decisions, admitting students and waitlisting students and denying students. This is not a decision that's rendering your worth as a person. We are admitting students to fulfill institutional goals, to bring in a dynamic class, and our decisions, most of the students that apply to Occidental are more than qualified to do the work here, but we are crafting a really interesting and dynamic class. So it is not a decision about you and your worth as a person. But we are excited to meet you in this process. And if I haven't said it enough, we are most excited to see you in an interview. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany now.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and we will go over the financial aid process here at Oxy. So we'll start with our basic premise of need-based financial aid. So here at Oxy, we view the financing of higher education truly as a partnership between student, family, state and federal governments, and the institution. Our goal here at Oxy is to provide students and families from all socioeconomic backgrounds access to our college's educational opportunities, which is why it is so imperative that our institution really drives a lot of our institutional funds towards our need-based financial aid. We want to be able to provide those opportunities for our students and families. The most important piece of this as well is that financial aid truly measures the family's ability and not willingness to pay for higher education. These are our deadlines. As Charlie mentioned, our deadlines do match the admissions deadlines. I will encourage as well to please apply early. We find that the process can be a lot more streamlined, and it just causes a lot less stress and anxiety if a student is applying early, providing enough time to ensure that documents have been received, applications have been submitted appropriately, and if any follow-up information is needed, that we can get that information in on time. This is our direct cost of attendance. So a cost of attendance at any institution will include both direct and indirect costs. Direct costs typically show up on a student's bill. Things like tuition, room and board, required fees, those are items that actually show up on a bill for a student. And our total direct costs this year are just over $73,000. Note that over 74% of our students receive institutional grants. So while you do see that price, know that we do have a majority of our students receiving some form of institutional aid. And our average institutional grant is $34,764. Oxy is committed to meeting 100% of demonstrated financial need. Now, what this means is that if we have a cost of attendance of $76,600 as an example, and a family's expected family contribution is $20,000, that would mean that a student's demonstrated financial need is the $56,600. So in this example scenario, a student would be receiving $3,100 in work study, $5,700 in need-based loans, and their remaining need is met with $47,800 in grants and scholarships. So we meet 100% of demonstrated financial need with a combination of work study, need-based loan, and institutional grant or scholarship. So how do you apply for aid? There are a few steps to apply for financial aid. The first two would be completing the financial aid applications. We utilize the Fafsa, or the free application for federal student aid. We also use the CSS, or College Scholarship Service Profile. It is a College Board product. Once those two items have been completed, about 24 hours after the CSS profile has been completed, specifically, you will receive an email. The student will receive an email to their email account with additional instructions about the institutional documentation service, the Idoc Portal. This is a portal where supplemental materials will be submitted. Things like tax returns, W-2s, and verification statements are typically what we ask for a financial aid application. And for our California residents, a GPA verification form. This is used in conjunction with the Fafsa to determine any Cal Grant eligibility. Reporting on parent marital status oftentimes can be tricky, so we have placed this here for you for reference, and it just goes over the various ways of how a family would apply for financial aid given their circumstance. So if parents are married, both parents would be included on the Fafsa and the CSS profile, and that also goes for parents who have never been married but are living together. Parents are remarried, we want to ensure that we're receiving step-parent information as well on both the Fafsa and the CSS profile. And if parents are divorced or separated, note that the Fafsa application and the CSS profile will include the custodial parent's information, but the non-custodial parent will submit a separate CSS profile capturing their income information. Expected family contributions are typically determined by using several factors. Some of them, but this list is not the full list, but it provides a general items that we consider as a part of that expected family contribution, and some of those include income, assets for both parent and student, and this is taxed and untaxed income. We consider household size, and we consider the number of dependents that are enrolled full-time in an undergraduate program. Special circumstances that we consider include things like losses or reductions in family income, death or illness, marriage or divorce, and unusual medical or dental expenses not covered by insurance, or any other unusual circumstances. Understanding that this year has been a year of just a lot of uncertainty, we acknowledge that there's been a lot of impacts economically due to the pandemic specifically. Special circumstances allows our office to review those situations, and we can determine what additional documentation that we might need from you. On the CSS profile specifically, there is a section for special circumstances where you can actually provide us a narrative of what your circumstance and situation is. Please use this field. Use this field for any situation that you may not have been able to report on either the FAFSA or the CSS profile. This will allow us to follow up with you and ask for additional documentation or information so that we can ensure that we are assessing financial aid for your family situation appropriately. These are the categories of financial assistance. We have need-based aid, which generally is work programs such as the Federal Work Study Program, loan programs, which would be federal and institutional need-based loans, and we have grant and scholarship programs. Any non-need-based aid we would consider would be merit scholarships, unsubsidized loans, and PLUS loans. It's very important to note that need-based aid and merit scholarships cannot replace the expected family contribution. The only two items that can are the unsubsidized loan and the PLUS loan. And if you are interested in seeing what a potential financial aid package could look like for you, I highly encourage that you utilize that net price calculator on our website. It is a tool that can help you understand what your financial aid package could look like should you be admitted to Oxy. And this provides you a sample calendar of how information is sent out to students and families. So should you be admitted in April, you would receive your aid offer after the completion of all financial aid application and materials. This includes submission of any supplemental materials like tax returns, W-2s, and verification statements. In June, an admitted student who has decided to commit to Oxy would then complete their loan promissory note. So any loan, if they're choosing to borrow a student loan, any loan documentation that we might need electronically, that would be completed at that time. July is when our Student Business Services Office would send out the first bill, and in August, the first payment is due. And thank you so much. That is everything on financial aid.
Great. All right. So we're going to go ahead and just launch into answering some questions that are starting to come in.
Sure.
Some have been answered in the Q&A box, but if there are things that you would like to know more about, you can go ahead and submit them, and then Tiffany and I will take a crack at answering them. So the first one, can I submit a creative writing supplement? Sure, absolutely. We definitely encourage you, if that's something that you're proud of, you think you might even, major creative writing, something with creative writing, that's something you can certainly submit to us. The thing I would discourage submitting to us, some people do have published papers that are 50 pages long of STEM research and things like that. That's something that the admission committee, we're not experts in the things you've been doing those big research papers on, so I don't think it's necessary to send in 50-page research papers. Zoe has asked, one of her letters of recommendation coming from anatomy and physiology, can that be considered an academic solid? Yes, it can.
The next question I see is, does the financial aid package cover health insurance? That depends. We do have a opportunity for students who may need additional financial assistance to cover on-campus health insurance. There is a process that would be that we go through with our director of student health. And so that is something that can be considered, but again, that's something that we would go through on an appeal basis, and there is more information that we request from a student. And the other question about how accurate is the net price calculator. The net price calculator, it really does depend, because it does require that all the information is input appropriately, and that is the biggest piece of it, is as long as you file or utilize the tool with the documentation that you would use to apply for financial aid on hand, I think it is a very helpful resource, and it does give a good ballpark range of what your financial aid could look like here at Oxy. It's a very useful tool.
The next question, on the common application, it does ask you, will you be applying for need-based financial aid? And how should you answer that question? We recommend everyone submit, if you are interested in getting need-based financial aid, to go ahead and mark yes to that question and go ahead and submit the Fafsa and the CSS profile. We have pretty generous packages, and so if it's a burden to fill out all those forms and you don't think you're going to qualify, then you don't necessarily have to. Anything you would add to that, Tiffany?
I think you've covered, that's everything that I would say as well. I agree.
Okay. Next question is, CSS profile required for merit scholarships? It is not. So if you're applying for merit, you don't have to submit any financial aid forms.
No.
Just check the box yes on the common application. I'll let you take this next one.
Sure. Is it normal for the first day to be able to get into the FAFSA? Yes, so October 1st is always the first day to get into the FAFSA application. I believe that is what this question is asking. So the FAFSA application and the CSS profile are both open and live, ready for you to go in to use to apply for financial aid.
So today's the day. And the next question is, can I apply for early decision 2 if I do not get accepted in early decision 1? No. So the final decisions are made in early decision that are final for the most part. They would be admit, deny, or we might defer you to the regular decision round from early decision 1. In early decision 2, we would make a final decision, admit or deny. And then in regular decision, we would admit, deny, or waitlist a student. But if you are not admitted in early decision 1, you cannot reapply that year. Daisy's asked, if I decide to apply ED2, should I have another interview since I've had one in August? No, one interview is fine. We only need you to have one interview. We get to know you in the process. So one interview is totally sufficient. The next question from Anonymous, will not be submitting SAT scores affect consideration for merit scholarship? No, we are awarding merit scholarships to, we're considering everyone for merit scholarships, whether or not you submit standardized test scores.
The next question is asking about just a little bit more information about work study. So work study is a program, it's a partnership program between Occidental and the federal government. And what work study does is it allows students to earn certain funds that are utilized through part-time employment on campus. The nice thing about what's a little bit different than a work study than any typical part-time job is that these funds are not considered income whenever you do apply for financial aid. These funds actually get excluded from that needs analysis. So work study is a little bit different than if you were to earn income outside of, say, if you got a part-time job at the local store or a coffee shop. But work study can be on and off campus, just depending on where you work. And it's a great opportunity to get some work experience while being on campus and allowing you to learn something different or learn about a different department on campus. And the next question I have here is, how do outside scholarships affect the family contribution? So outside scholarships, as I mentioned, outside need-based, merit-based aid or need-based aid, non-need-based aid, unfortunately cannot replace that expected family contribution. But how we coordinate outside scholarships is, first we review a student's financial aid package and we determine if they have any need-based loan. We would then ensure that we replace their need-based loan with that outside scholarship. And if needed, then we would go into their work study. We do everything we possibly can to preserve that grant funding because we understand how important that free gift aid is for our students and families.
I'm going to take this next one from Caroline.
Sure. Would having another child in graduate school affect the financial aid award to my daughter applying at Oxy as a freshman? Depending on the school that the type of program that your student is attending. So if your child is attending, say, law school or medical school, that might be an opportunity for us to consider, but that would be something that is on appeal. Generally speaking, we consider students that are participating in undergraduate programs as members of the household that are attending college.
And then the GPA.
Sure. For the next question has to do with Cal Grant and GPA. There are specific GPA requirements. There is a Cal Grant A and a Cal Grant B. The Cal Grant A does require a 3.0 GPA in order to be eligible for it, and our Cal Grant B requires a 2.0 GPA in order to be eligible for it. So typically schools, the K-12 level will provide the GPA verifications for what your GPA is in high school, so that way it can be verified with the California Student Aid Commission.
Jabir asks, do the different methods of calculating GPA at high school, does Occidental recalculate GPAs when looking at applications? We do, because every high school does weight things differently. We care about your weighted GPA. We want to see how your high school sees you in context of which courses you've been taking. But when we report out, when I gave you that range of GPAs, it's an unweighted GPA. Most students falling in that 3.6 to 3.94 range, that middle 50% there. So we do recalculate. And we just look at your academic subject areas. The next question is about submitting electronic music and submitting that through Slide Room. So any artist absolutely can and should upload compositions, performance pieces if you are a vocal or instrumental music player. Art, dance, those type of things. Absolutely, theater. Upload that and we will consider that in our process. There's a question about international financial aid. There's actually a whole separate session on international financial aid, so we encourage you to check that out. It's a much more complex topic, so that's later in October, so we encourage you to check that out. Would a recommendation letter from a Portuguese teacher be considered an academic subject? Absolutely, it's a language subject. So that's one of the areas we consider one of the 5 core areas is English, math, social sciences, natural sciences, and a foreign language. So absolutely, we would consider that. The acceptance rate for ED1 is around 50%, but for both ED1 and ED2, it's around 50%. For regular decision, it's closer to about 30 to 35%.
Okay. Is Fafsa first come, first serve in California? And the answer to that is no, but you do want to make sure that you meet that March 2nd priority deadline specific for Cal grants. In regards to federal aid, there is no first come, first serve. If you are eligible, you will receive federal financial aid. Cal Grant, however, does have a very specific priority deadline that you would need to meet, and that is March 2nd.
And for those of you who do not live in California, the Cal Grant is specific to California residents. So if you're not from California, don't worry about it.
Yes.
Lily wants to know what type of questions will be asked in the interview. That's a great question. So generally our interview has 3 parts. We want to ask you a little bit about your academics, what you're passionate about, what classes you love the most, what classes don't you enjoy as much, what do you think you'll be majoring in. The second part of the interview, we ask you how you keep yourself busy outside the classroom. Again, looking to build that vibrant residential community that we have here. We want you to tell us all the things you're involved in, really, flesh out that resume. Tell us what excites you and what keeps you busy. And the third part of the interview is just telling us why you'd want to be at a school like Oxy and allow you to make the case that Oxy's environment, Oxy's experience was a good match for you. So we'll kind of ask you how you found out about Oxy, what you hope to get out of the experience. And then we allow you to ask questions as well. And that's about 45 minutes of conversation. We're just mostly listening to you talk. I generally don't ask you weird questions of, what type of tree you'd be or anything like that. We're just looking to get to know you and really add that sense of personality, to your application file. The next question, what is the deadline for interviews? There is no deadline to request interviews, but we do ask that you typically complete these interviews before you apply. These interviews are completed most often by alumni volunteers, and we actually reach capacity amongst our alumni volunteers sometime in late November, early December. And so if you are applying to Oxy, even for a regular decision, we want you to start thinking about requesting that interview sometime in the next 6 to 8 weeks. The sooner the better, and then we'll get that match made. And we also have seniors on campus that conduct these interviews as well. All of them are virtual. So it's very easy to set up, very easy to register for, but we definitely encourage you to request an interview, again, before you apply. And that is typically, we recommend doing it by Thanksgiving because sometimes we reach capacity at that time. The next question is, an interview required or encouraged? It is encouraged. It is definitely not required. Will an interview negatively impact a student? It is the rarest of cases that an interview would ever negatively impact a student, because we're just hearing about what a student is interested in, what they're passionate about, what keeps them busy. It is an evaluative interview just to get a context of how the student ticks and works. But 99% of the time, the interview helps us make the case for a student as to why they would be successful at a place like Oxy. We're not looking for reasons in an interview to deny someone. That's why we encourage everyone to interview, because they are pretty relaxed and allow us just to get to know you and see what makes you you.
Is it worth it to complete the net price calculator? Is it worth it to complete the FAFSA and CSS profile depending on the outcome of your net price calculator? And the answer to that truly is it depends. If there might be special circumstances, I will say that the net price calculator does provide a range, but it also does not provide an opportunity for students and families to indicate any special circumstances. And that's because it's a very personal process in regards to, it really takes a financial aid administrator to review a financial aid application. So it really does depend on the student and family and what their situation is. And the net price calculator might provide information that we might still need to collect additional documentation to confirm what the financial circumstance is. And while general advice is to submit the FAFSA early, is it the same advice for all other financial aid programs? So for all financial aid, I would highly encourage that financial aid applications just be submitted early, just to provide yourself that opportunity no different than Charlie mentioned about making sure that there isn't any hiccups or that you're not sure if something was uploaded or if anything happens. It's a multiple step process. You have to complete 2 applications in addition to waiting a 24-hour period in order to be able to upload additional documents. Gathering those documents sometimes can take time. So I highly encourage that any financial aid application be submitted early. It's better to be in earlier than it is late, of course.
And we don't have any priority deadlines for merit awards. So while I recommend everyone submit their application before the deadline, there's certainly no priority of merit consideration by any date. The next question is from Pippa. What are ways to stand out in the admission process? First and foremost, hopefully you've heard me say it a few times, is interview. We want to get to know you on that really personal level. So hopefully you're able to interview with us. We get to really see that personality. We have a lot of ways to engage with us at this time. In addition to these programs that we have these really wonderful student chats that happen on Wednesdays. If you really want to have a kind of connection with a current student, that's another way to really engage with us and get more information and get that feel of what campus is like. And I think once you engage in those type of opportunities, when you're writing that Why Occidental essay, it can sometimes be a bit more impactful when you can say, I had such a great conversation with so-and-so on the Wednesday evening session that I attended. So we encourage you to check out those opportunities so you can most authentically explain why Oxy would be a great next step for you. Alex wants to know if submitting an art portfolio would disadvantage you in any way, such as if you're not applying as an art major, should you submit it? And you don't know how talented you are, something like this. So no, as submitting an art portfolio will never hurt you. The art department or the theater department will never write us a note saying, oh, they were awful, don't admit them. No, they give us a priority list of the instruments that they need, the vocal performers that they really loved, the theater students that they believe would be a major contributor, but they do not send us a list of people they don't want. So absolutely, please send us anything you'd like to submit. We do actually have admission team members that have gone to grad school for art and actually are able to bring up your artwork in committee and kind of share with the committee their thoughts. And so that's another fun thing. So we definitely encourage you to submit that. The question, if I'm below the average of the GPA requirements, will I still have a chance to be accepted in Oxy? There's of course always the chance because we're considering a lot of different factors. Realistically, if you're super outside the ballpark and you've been a C student for most of high school, honestly, that's not the type of student that we typically are affirming in our process. Our students are generally the B+ A- student. We certainly have students that had a rough 9th grade and have really turned it around and really have that upward trend, are now achieving that B+ A- grade in junior and senior year. But if a student consistently has been a low performer, they would not be someone that would really carry the day in committee. But if there is an upward trend where students are now performing in that B+ A- level in honors and AP courses, that certain student would certainly be in conversation and certainly be someone we'd looking at all their factors in their file. And the last question we're seeing, a fun one. What will need to happen for Oxy to open up and no longer be virtual? A vaccine? Do you have an equation or threshold you're following? We have many working groups on campus to address this very question. Because we are in this city of Los Angeles, there are, in addition to our own campus priorities, our own campus community and how we can promise to behave and do those type of things, we are under the jurisdiction of the city of LA. And so there are certain regulations that we must follow that the city of LA sets out that allows us to not be fully autonomous in that decision. But there are campus communities and committees, that are really working through this question. Our faculty have been truly incredible this summer, really redesigning their courses to be just so innovative in so many different ways. Our students are really thriving this semester. And so our full hope is that we can be back to in-person as soon as possible, that we can welcome visitors, hopefully in the new year. But again, a lot of that does come from the city of LA. And so we're working in conjunction with them to make it very possible. We are running up against the 9 o'clock hours, so I see 2 questions, so we'll go ahead and answer those and then we'll wrap up. Sharon wants to know a little bit about how does an interest in playing varsity athletics impact the admission process. About 25% of our students at Oxy, and this is the case at nearly every liberal arts college, 25% of our students are varsity athletes. And so we definitely have we work with our coaches to bring in a compelling and competitive athletic group every year. And so certainly if someone does possess athletic talent, that can definitely influence our admission decisions. So if you are a varsity athlete and are looking to play D3 athletics, we encourage you to be in touch with one of our coaches or my colleague Jordan in the admission office, who is our liaison with all of the coaches. So I'll let Jordan pop his information actually into Sharon's answer. And then Lisa, this is a good question to end on, wants to know, do you think admissions will be impacted by COVID and OSCT will be harder or easier to get in? That, I guess, is the $1 trillion question. I think I can reflect on working at a large research university compared to working at Occidental and another liberal arts college. And I can say for certain that liberal arts colleges approach this process in a truly nuanced way and have for decades. And it's one data point. A standardized test score is one data point amongst so many that we consider. And so in this year of years, we have always had a very human-centered process. We've always really looked at how people will be impacting our residential community. All of these things, are on display when students are pursuing the application process this year. And so we don't predict that there will be anything wildly different with selectivity, anything like that. I think it's going to be a more nuanced process. It's going to be a lot more work on our end to get to know students. And that's why we are really encouraging that interview over and over again, so we really get to know students and understand how this year has affected them. But I think we're in a pretty incredible position as a liberal arts college and the way we approach our admission process to be able to make this as fair for students and families as possible. With that, we are at time. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and ask all these fantastic questions. On behalf of Tiffany and I, we look forward to working with you more in this process, and thanks so much for joining.
Yes, thank you.